I love wild rivers and lakes. Fish captivate me. In 1969, at 18, and a Midwestern girl, I saw my first spawning steelhead in a shallow stream I was fording in central Idaho. It was 3 feet long. Years later, in 1991, I was on the Nez Perce Reservation. No fishing signs had been posted. I needed to understand why. The following year, I attended the Great River of the West Conference along the Columbia River. I learned about Celilo Falls, historically one of the largest freshwater fisheries in the world, where indigenous people fished for salmon for 10,000 years. Later that year, I was at the Sawtooth Hatchery in Idaho, the very day a lone wild male sockeye was caught in the weir. After swimming 900 miles from the ocean, I broke down in tears when I saw him in his indoor concrete capture tank. They later named him Lonesome Larry, the last of this ancestral run of wild sockeye salmon in Redfish Lake. That image of this beautiful, amazing creature never left me. So in 2020, driving through the spectacular Wallowa homeland of the Nez Perce in Oregon, I learned that tribal fisheries had a plan to reintroduce sockeye in Wallowa Lake, where they hadn't been in over 100 years. I knew then that I had another sockeye story to tell. Welcome to Voices of the Wild Earth. I'm Jane Fritz, and this is People of the Salmon. The people in our storytellers are the Namipu, or Nez Perce. They are deeply tied to the Columbia River salmon. They will take us on this journey from the ocean upriver through the once grand passage of Celilo Falls, continuing up the Columbia's tributaries 600 miles inland until we reach the glacial Wallowa Lake in the lap of the Eagle Cap Wilderness of northeast Oregon, once home to tens of thousands of sockeye salmon. What was it like 100 years ago when Wallowa Lake was teeming with sockeye? Kara Berlin fishes in Alaska. She'll help us imagine what it feels like.
So that sound that you're hearing is taken from the Igigik River mouth in Bristol Bay, Alaska, which is the world's largest sustainable sockeye fishery, where the water is just roiling with fish. I mean, it's almost spiritual, and I'm just taken aback with gratitude to witness something that is what feels to be like the last wild place, truly wild, where nature isn't just limping along and surviving, it's truly thriving. We say that, wild salmon, they fuel our body, our mind, and our spirit. And when you get to see something like that, you are filled with appreciation for the circle of life and the ability to be a steward for the environment.
I want to see sockeye popping in the Wallowa River where it meets the Wallowa Lake. And when those fish, those adult fish from the ocean come back, I want to hear that.
That's Jim Harbeck, a fisheries biologist. He's worked for Nez Perce Tribal Fisheries since 1998. He's my guide for much of this story. Seeing sockeye again in Wallowa Lake is a dream of the tribal elders and Jim's mentor, Silas Whitman. I first interviewed Silas in 1991 when he was fisheries director in Lapwai, Idaho, on the Nez Perce Reservation.
In the past, where I've gone to streams where, as a child, I was at and remember seeing countless hundreds of fish going by on their way to their annual spawning. Never, as a child, never realizing that in my wonderment of that survival of that fish, that it would one day come to an end. That's when I get that sense of sadness, and then it's replaced in with a welling rush of anger. then then I go full circle, and I feel badly because the very ignorance that people have about my people, my way of life, and those things that I hold dear to me, and about those remaining fish that struggle through the dams, that struggle through the lack of flow, that struggle through the degraded, denuded habitat.
On one of my many trips along the Columbia, on the Washington side, I threw my sleeping bag out on the rocky ground and camped far above the now smooth surface of the river that flooded Celilo Falls. After midnight in the moonlight, and once the cars on the interstate in Oregon grew quieter, I could almost hear the roar and see the enormous clouds of mist.
So most of the family grew up with our father fishing.
Roberta Kipp lived and fished at Celilo Falls. In the 1940s and 50s, hundreds of native fishermen came to fish here, including the Nez Perce.
The oldest children at that time were myself, my younger brother, and my younger sister were allowed to fish off the scaffold. I can remember being about 9, 10. As children, you're not scared. Riding that scaffold, it was just something that you did. And we would put our rope tied around our waist, and we would have these long fishing poles, dip nets. And when we got a fish, we had to pull it up and flip it on the scaffold. Some of them were like almost 6 feet long, and it was heavy.
The late Rick Ellenwood and his family also fished here. Cable cars could hold up to 400 pounds of salmon.
Our place was, we had to go across on these older big box-like type things, and we rode on them, and it was a cable that ran across. And when you went over the falls, boy, I tell you, it was an exciting experience. It had you on edge. I always remember that. You go over there, and they'd load the fish on these big boxes. The big fish, too. These are king salmon. They're huge. And you load them all on that box, and then you come back, and that thing would sway left to right.
Getting onto that cable car, you had to make sure that you were secured in there, sitting down and holding on the sides with both hands as it went through. Went from the top, and down to the area where our father fished. What family was down there, they'd have to catch that cable car, and then we'd get off.
And then you bring it over, and then you put them in sacks, and then women would clean them out and everything else and get them ready. Some went to the canneries, some went to your own use.
And then our father would gaff them. Gaff tool was like a spear thing with a hook on it, and he'd put it in this big old bin. Then he'd have to take that bin on that scaffold car back over and put the bin in his car. Then he would go to the fish yards in Portland, Oregon, and sell the fish. Sometimes he'd sell the fish alongside the road. That was his way of making a living.
I can't even imagine how ferociously loud it must have been to actually live there day after day.
The sound of the falls, the mist, it was sort of like a deafening sound. You go to sleep listening to the falls, and you'd wake up listening to the falls.
You could see salmon hanging from all those, shacks is what they were, but they were happy people. They were catching salmon to take home, food for the winter. This is in the fall time, and they either dried it, or else they salted it, or they take it home fresh and put it in the freezers. And it was recognized and established rights that they had on each area that they fished. You didn't have to have papers, you didn't have to have any title rights or anything like that.
A salmon chief directed the fishing, cultural activities, and spiritual ceremonies in the longhouse. He made sure that despite there being millions of salmon swimming upstream, catching them with restraint and respect was essential. It was dangerous work, and at that time only 1 in 20 fish would typically be caught.
As young girls, we would have to help serve in the longhouse, and the old woman would sit on mats. The old women would be on one side, and the men would be on the other side. The old women would have kind of like whip-like things, and if you didn't move fast enough, they just brushed it across your legs. The fish was buried in a big pit, layered with leaves, coals on the bottom, and they were layered all the way to the top. And then when the fish were ready, they'd dig it up, and then they'd serve it.
Grandpa had told me to go ahead and take this one fish home, and I was carrying it on my back. It's pretty heavy, and I was walking uphill, and these people from all over were watching fishing and everything that's going on. And they stopped me and they said, "Young man, can you sell this fish to us?" They said they'd give me $5, which was a lot of money to me. And so I sold it for $5. And I went up to the store and I had a bottle of pop and I had a ice cream cone and also ate a sandwich and got some candy bars and shared it with my buddies that was with me. Of course, I played the rest of the afternoon. I never did go back to fish. When I got home that evening, my grandmother was there, and I seen that look on her face, and like, and Grandpa says, I want to talk to you. And he says, what'd you do with that fish that I sent you home to cook? I said, well, I sold it. And I said, I got a little bit of money left. I was trying to give him that money. He didn't want the money. That food was supposed to be for our supper tonight. And we're supposed to eat tonight and all share in it together. That food is more important than money. That salmon gave his life to us, for us to share.
But in 1957, everything at Celilo Falls changed. The building of the Dalles Hydroelectric Dam by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Bonneville Power Administration inundated Celilo under 110 feet of river water. The dam dramatically changed the landscape, the Columbia River, and these subsistence cultures forever. Almost 70 years have passed, and still the Nispers talk about the gravity of this loss.
Our mother told us to dress in our wing dresses and be respectful, and I ended up standing by a lot of these older Indian women. That's where I was able to observe the tears streaming down their face. It was very emotional. We heard the dynamite blasting, and we could see from a distance. Loss was incredible. The United States, the state of Oregon being one of them, was all about energy. And that's why they blew up the Celilo Falls and they built the Dalles Dam.
It was very disappointing to see when the dam inundated Celilo Falls. It was just like losing something that was really valuable and great. Like losing a close friend. You kind of felt really downtrodden and just lost. But now what are we going to do? It was it wasn't only just to catch fish. It was a gathering of many people, and we had a lot of friends, and we'd visit. We had dances down there. We had feasts, get together, all these tribes, and it was fun. And that was gone. And the fish was gone. Sure, they give us all kinds of money. It never has compensated that void in my life. It's still empty. And that's just the way I still feel about it. So I just feel that Celilo was something that we all lost, all the Native Americans in the Northwest. We lost something all together. Like I say, a close friend.
You talk about Celilo, and I get a lump in my throat. It took me many years living on the Umatilla Reservation to really get over that. It will follow me my whole life.
In 1991, Jamie Pinkham was tribal forestry director when I interviewed him. Eventually, he became director of the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission in 2017. And most recently, he served in the Biden administration in the Army Corps of Engineers.
When they put the dam in and we lost the falls, one of the stories that was told to me by a friend that expressed it in a traditional view is that when you change the land or you change the fish, then you change the people. And that certainly is what had happened at Celilo Falls, because we had fished there since time immemorial and relied upon it for subsistence. But when that fisheries resource was gone, what did the Indian people have to turn to next? Some people had to find a different way of life to make a living.
There's not too many people that are alive today that either lived there and or had relatives that fished there. After the falls was flooded, my father continued to fish. He got a boat, and we fished with the big nets. And then our father would do construction work.
We look at in relationship and how that connects with maybe social problems, with unemployment, with loss of spirituality. The whole thing is interconnected. For us to be strong, to maintain our culture, we got to make sure that we are able to preserve and maintain all important elements in the environment. Because through each animal, there's a spiritual power that animal provides us with. So we've got to make sure that we keep all those things in the circle so that our life can go on as Indian people in a traditional way.
So where do you fish?
I fish on the Columbia River, just below John Day Dam at Rufus.
I met Ethel Green at a tribal celebration in Oregon in 2022. As we walked along the Wallowa River, I was surprised to learn that she had fished much of her life on the Columbia River.
So that's where we fished there for years. My dad, who passed away, his name was Jesse Green, and fished right below there, and we had treaty sites and new sites that certain spots where we always set our nets. Then when he passed, us girls and my brothers would fish, and then my brothers passed away, and then so us girls sort of took control, and we'd have to fish and go down there and set nets, because that was a lot of work, because you'd have to carry the nets, put them on a boat, you have to fix your nets, you have to clean them, you have to take care of them, you have to sew them up, set them up so that when you let them out that they go out right. So it's a lot of physical work.
Ethel's mother, Loretta Halfmoon, was one of 3 women who commandeered the river after Celilo was flooded.
You know, she kept control of the river, especially in our area. And then below that, down by the Dalles, was Shirley Iman. And then below that by the Hood River, that's where it's Mary Settler. So the whole river was pretty much these 3 women took control. They were fishing and going out, and Mom would be always telling us stories about her and Shirley and Mary going on the river on a boat. You know, they'd cruise at night, go on the river at nighttime, and they were the river women.
Ethel and her sisters share the stories of salmon migration and subsistence fishing with younger generations of her tribe because they need to keep this tradition alive.
You know, every year we'd bring our families back, grandkids and all the daughters and sons. No, right now there's only us 3. There's me and Kermit and Sherry. My sisters talk with the kids to tell them what fishing was like and tell them about how the fish came about. They come up here, they lay their eggs, and they go back out into the ocean. Then they come back. You know, that's a life. That's really a big life.
Since the 1970s, biologists tracking migrating salmon have watched their populations dwindle. Every year, fewer and fewer fish are caught, and barely enough for tribal ceremonies or to give to tribal members for food.
I haven't really been fishing for the last few years, you know, because I was working and then the fish was so scarce.
What's your hope?
As far as fishing and the fisheries and all the fish, you know, it would be my hope that they would at least last, you know, fish, you know, forever.
This year we had 3 fish giveaways of salmon, whereas in the past we used to have about maybe 10 fish each. One year when you got 2 for the whole year.
Each run of Columbia and Snake River salmon mirror the changes in the natural environment, spring, summer, and fall. But with 4 dams on the Columbia and 4 dams on the Snake River and the other pressures of civilization, salmon are struggling to survive. In 1991, there were only 7% of their historic numbers left. That same year, the Snake River sockeye were the first to be listed on the Federal Endangered Species List. More species and runs followed. Fish hatcheries were built to help the salmon, but started to impact wild fish stocks, and they fuel more harvesting of the fish. Salmon have been overfished before. Federal listings haven't made much of a difference, except for possibly slowing the rate of decline. Agency management could be more in line with tribal management. Silas Whitman saw this as far back as 1991.
Why we need things like water quality, water quantity, flows in order to allow those fish to migrate to the ocean, and then flows to enhance a return. Adequate passage, whatever man, in this instance meaning all of us, have done to circumvent the system, we must somehow substitute something that allows us to allow life to go on in its cycle. We cannot continue with this effort that's come at the expense of mining and logging and irrigation and agriculture and power consumption. What we would like to be able to do is to ensure that we have the ability to be at the forefront of pursuing good management. And it's a collaborative effort. Life is a circle, and that's Basically, what we seek to do is to reinstill those circles of life somehow. If technology allows us to put in substitutions for what Mother Nature created naturally, then we must do that. We must do that in order to survive.
After more than 30 years of recent federal and state management, today salmon in the Columbia River system are struggling to survive. Silas Whitman and Tribal Fisheries believe they know how to restore and recover salmon, more in line with their traditional knowledge. But having the federal and state governments give the tribe a chance to apply this knowledge has been the challenge. But it's also what has kept Silas Whitman working for 5 decades on this critical issue on behalf of the Namipu. We spoke again about his role in tribal fisheries management in 2021.
They embodied in me this desire that we want to restore and recover all the stocks that we have names for that belong in our territorial waters in our 13 million acre treaty territory. That included, the sockeye, the coho, the fall chinook, summer chinook, spring chinook, and the steelhead. That we felt that we had the ability to restore those fish that needed our help to intervene. And then we needed to recover others that had gone into extinction. What man had destroyed, we try to put it back together again. All stocks, all populations, all species, those that mean something to us that we have a name for, we have a place for.
Salmon knowledge embraces both deeply ingrained cultural ways and understanding of their remarkable life cycle. Treated with respect and restraint, salmon can sustain the Namipu, and the people will reciprocate with caring for the fish. This is both spiritual and material knowledge.
We have to depend upon ourselves to provide that the spiritual sustenance, which includes fish, that includes our first foods, it includes the ability of our women folks who go out and gather all these things. We have to be ready to meet that challenge that they give us, which is to provide everything needed for us to sustain our health and hopefully get our longevity back. The way that we take care of those animals when they come back is really necessary to understand the conditions in the habitat that are there that sustain them for their survival until they come into our hands and help us. And the agreement with the salmon and their cousins about they would give of themselves to help the Namipu survive. In order for us to do those things by song and ceremony, they had to be sustained culturally in the way that we would take care of them, when we would prepare them, how we would prepare them, and how we would then use them at certain times of the year.
Traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK, comes from a different worldview. It is a result of generations of Namipu learning about the fish and then integrating Western science into management actions.
We went out and we took our biologists out. We actually physically counted how many fish were in these territorial waters where we used to fish, as they say, from time immemorial. But we saw that all the activities around, be it logging, be it development of housing, municipalities, all these government things, how they contributed to the demise of our fishery. We had the habitat, we were habitat rich and salmon poor. So we went back to Washington and we put that directive together using our sovereignty, saying that we're going to restore and recover these species of fish so that we can feed our people, that our people will be free to exercise their treaty right that was guaranteed to us initially in the Treaty of 1855. We don't need to write a plan. We need to impose and implement the plan based upon those things that we know, devise a cultural science that fits our needs.
Applying TEK helped boost the coho, chinook, and steelhead to healthier numbers in the Clearwater River Basin. Then the tribe looked to their aboriginal home in Oregon in the Wallowas, where they were driven out in 1877. Reacquiring lands and obtaining conservation easements would help ensure survival of the 5 species of fish that swim inland 600 miles to the most remarkable and wildest of spawning habitat.
In Northeast Oregon, for example, that we want to go home. We want to be able to be there and to establish the presence that we've always had, but that presence has always been in spiritual terms. Now we want them in terms of where we're contributing something, for example, to Wallowa County, to help us to protect those things that the grandfather, our creator, has given us.
Chinook were the first species of salmon to be restored in the rivers of the Wallowa, beginning in 1997, and their populations are improving. In 2017, the tribe began reintroduction of coho, which had been locally extinct since 1971, nearly 50 years. Coho salmon once returned from the ocean by the thousands to spawn in late fall, feeding Chief Joseph's Wawama band at the confluence of the Lostine and Wallowa rivers.
So we can restore the coho back here. Coho are wonderful colonizers. Wherever the temperature is right, those little fish will go back, and they're smaller than the Chinook. And so, but they share a fishery. The sockeye are like the first cousins. Sockeye, we call it the koiks. The coho, or the silvers, are called koidlai. One goes into the lake systems, the other stays in the river and goes into the streams to spawn. They both have the same characteristic of getting bright red, protruding jaws and so forth, and the same actions and activities.
I wanted to experience firsthand the tribe's efforts with coho reintroduction, so I traveled to Wallowa County to visit the Lostine River facility in Weir, owned and managed by the tribe. On this cold October morning, Jim Harbeck and I first stop at the river's confluence with the Wallowa River.
This line of trees marks the Wallowa River, and then west of us, with those tree lines, marks the Lostine River. So basically that little patch of water is the confluence where the two rivers meet. And in this flat spot, this meadow was the site of one of the largest Nez Perce villages in the Wallowa country. They were there because all the fish and the fantastic fishing were here. Chief Joseph would frequently bring folks to here and was a great host.
Then, a mile farther down the road, Jim takes me to where the fish enter the weir and are trapped, keeping them from swimming upstream to spawn.
So a coho swimming upstream and encountering that weir will search for a way to continue. That's their natural behavior. If they run into a log jam, they're going to be looking for a way to pass that log jam. And so they're eventually going to move all the way over to here, where they're going to sense, this is the way forward. This is the way upstream, and they'll enter it that way.
And after 600 miles, they've gotten pretty good getting around obstacles.
Yes, exactly. Although there is an energy cost for that effort. Those 8 dams cost these fish something in terms of the energy that they have.
Finally, we joined facility manager Rick Zolman and his crew up on the fish processing platform of stainless steel tables, fish tanks, and digital equipment.
Basically what we're going to do is the fish are in the trap. We're going to go ahead and crowd them, put them in a hopper, lift them up, put them into a fresh flow of water, and then we're going to start working them through. The coho, we're going to be taking sexes on them, lengths, checking for tags, and then giving them a punch, a gill punch, put them back in the river. That gill punch is a genetic sample, as well as the fish that go back to the river gives them a mark to say that we handle them at this weir. If people go out and do spawning ground surveys, they can prove they've been here.
So Jane, you're going to see coho, but there are other fish species as well that you'll see. Primarily whitefish.
Mountain whitefish.
Mountain whitefish, they are making their spawning run as well.
How many coho salmon are you expecting this year?
Since it's early in the reintroduction program, this is only our third year of returns. 5,000 plus adults came over Bonneville, but they go through all those fisheries, and right now, according to what we see at Lower Granite, there should be about 1,000 fish that are in this area. So I'd say most likely 500 to 700 we hope would come here, but whether or not that happens, we don't know.
How many have returned
So
to date?
23 plus whatever's in the trap.
So they've entered the trap through here, Jane, and they raised the floor a little bit to make these fish a little accessible. So you can see the coho in here. He's putting them inside the hopper, which will raise it up and make the fish available. These large fish are the coho salmon, Lostine coho salmon that entered the trip yesterday and last night. These guys are saying now that there's maybe 10, 12 coho in the trap today. They're maybe 24 inches long, some a little longer, some a little shorter, 8 to 10 pounds each. And you can see they have the reddish hue to them right now. They're not as brilliant as sockeye, but they do turn red, especially the males. And so out in the ocean, they're silver. Silver is an adaptive color for that type of environment, and then they're coming here, and those would be called their spawning colors now. So just to leave saltwater and to enter freshwater is a big step. These are animals that go through quite a physical change, almost like a butterfly in a sense. That they're able to live in saltwater, but they're born and live for a year and a half in freshwater, head out, survive in a marine environment, which requires physical adaptations. And now they're back in freshwater to bring the next generation to fruition. So after the guys are finished working these fish up and releasing them to continue their migration upstream,
Is that a wild coho?
Yes.
So the first fish you catch is a wild coho
From
today.
yeah.
No mark. Male, 690.
So he just put him back in the river?
Yep, go back to the river.
Each coho salmon, male and female, is handled quickly but carefully, measured in millimeters, scanned for a pit tag, punched in a fin to take a small sample for genetic studies, and finally released back in the river through a large tube. It's quite an assembly line for the fish. So now tell me about that one. That particular fish.
That was a coho.
And was it a hatchery, wild?
Hatchery.
God is considered a hatchery fish.
Oh, now that one's redder.
Male, 610.
Look at how pretty.
Negative on the pit.
So they're taking a DNA sample of one of its fins, or in this case, its tail.
So Jane, this is a pit tag reader, and it'll show up the code, individualized code. If it has one, it'll show up on the screen and then record it in this device. Most of them will not have it, and that's why you hear a bill say negative, all negative. But on occasion, there'll be a pit tag, and it'll read on the screen, and we'll know its history, both going out to the ocean and coming back, because they're read at each one of the facilities, dams, and here as well. Not all of them have pit tags. You know, a tag costs about $2 each, and so we only put tags in a percentage, but it's a known
Male,
percentage.
690. Add.
Negative pit.
The crew continues to process each fish and get them back in the river as quickly and safely as they can. It's fast, methodical, and cold work, and by late morning, the day's catch are recorded. Now, the females are different looking than the males.
Yeah, they don't have the type on the snout. They're more rounded, and then they have the nice big belly.
With full of eggs. How many fish caught just now?
Okay, we have 14 coho today and 3 mountain whitefish today.
Prior to today, we've had coho at the weir, but in single digits. So this is the highest single day thus far in the run of the coho. So it's a good day to be here.
I visited the Lostine Weir again 2 years later to see how the coho program was progressing. Rick Salmon and a young Nez Perce tribal member, Red Heart, new to the crew, greeted me, but there were no coho in the trap that day. Rick explained that the success of the reintroduction program is dependent on several factors.
Hatchery programs years ago, they would take them from any place and put them in. The type of quality of fish you're getting back is part of the issue we're dealing with. Not just getting a fish back, but getting back a fish that's proper and has a better chance of survival and carrying on in future generations in the same river. Genetically and what they're used to physically. It's hard to take a fish that only swims a mile from the ocean and put it into a program here where we're 600 miles away. That's one of the reasons why the coho are not busting down our doors, is they're coming a long ways compared to what they're used to. It takes generations to build that strength up to be able to handle it. We put smolts in first year is 2017. They've been extinct since the early 70s, so it was quite a change in what was happening in the biology in the river. We've been having fish, coho are predominantly 3-year-olds as adults, so jacks are just 2-year-olds. So you let them go in the spring, and then next fall they're back as jacks. So it's a quick turnaround, which is nice to see fish coming back, but it also shows you with that short of a life cycle, it's easy to exterminate them again. Just 3 years of no fish passage and they're gone. We're getting literally thousands of fish over Bonneville. I think last year we had 10,000, 12,000 came over Bonneville, but we only trapped about 88 here. So getting them to the weir is the next thing. Now, we've reintroduced them. They're in the Grand Ronde system in the Wallowa, which is a good thing. That's one of the things we want to do. But getting enough fish back here to be able to perpetuate that program of 500,000 smolts is not occurring. And so we're trying to do some new things, and it's a lot more effort on our part.
In addition to the fish's long journey, there are high capture rates at all the fisheries along the way. Once they are counted at Bonneville Dam, the first dam on the Columbia from the ocean, the coho team has an idea of what fish might return to the Lostine. Thus far, they have seen only 2 generations of coho, so it's too early to celebrate the program's success or compare it to the recovery program of the Chinook, which began 20 years earlier. But with more time, Rick and his team aim to create a self-sustaining coho population. From your knowledge, Red Heart, how did these fish find this place?
I'm not too sure what it is inside of them that makes them know exactly where to go and how to get back up to where he came from. I think it's pretty cool that they can tell just by the water, where they were first born.
And that plays into the science part of it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They've been studying for years trying to figure out what exactly is it that allows them to gravitate back to their same spawning ground areas. Magnetic electric fields, they think that affect them. Some people talk about the way the moon phases are and stuff. I don't know if they've came up with one way that is the ultimate way, but there certainly is something in the truth of it, that they know where they came from, where they're going back.
How many do you hope come back this year?
I would hope to get 200 or 300 is what I'm hoping for. We've never gotten more than about 90 in a year, so it's going to be doubling or tripling because we did some events to help them to key in here better, and we hope that's going to work out. Now, a lot of them have been caught. It gets narrower and narrower how the population is. It's got to come here for that. I need about 300 females to make the program of 500,000, so I'm bucking from way down low trying to get up to a much higher number. Well, the people that lived in Wallowa County originally relied on the salmon too, so they know that what it meant to be here. And now that we have the Nez Perce coming back into their homelands, we get more of an amplified effect of that. So people are very tied to the area, the fish, the animals.
What do you think about those stories where you could walk across the backs of the salmon to get across the river?
It's crazy to think about to where it is now, looking at the river, just imagining hundreds and hundreds of salmon just going through. You could just walk across their backs. That'd be nice. That'd be cool.
The Nez Perce Coho program is a model for the tribe's reintroduction of sockeye salmon into Wallowa Lake, miles upstream from the Lostine facility.
We're standing next to the upper Wallowa River. It's above Wallowa Lake.
Jim traces backwards the fish's return journey from the upper Wallowa River to the ocean.
And the river, of course, empties into Wallowa Lake, which is approximately 3 miles long. And then the river reemerges at the foot of the lake, and from that point flows the length of the Wallowa Valley, and then it merges with the Grand Ronde River. And the Grand Ronde flows northeast until it hits the Snake River, and the Snake River merges with the Columbia River, and then the water empties out into the ocean at Astoria.
We have one lake left that's stream-fed. That's the Wallowa.
It's been more than 100 years, but Silas's dream to bring the ocean-going sockeye back to Wallowa Lake is soon to become real.
The idea is that we're going to be able to get the sockeye back, which is considered the filet mignon of the fishery world in taste. If the sockeye start coming back, we'll trap and haul them if we have to. Anything that requires us an ability of taking those animals back, they taste the water and they come home. This is their home. They go where they want to go. They provide the sustenance for us. We can catch them, but also restoring back to that native habitat. And Wallowa Lake happens to be one of those. We've not fished that for a very long time, but we are now into the Wallowa River, into the Lostine, into the Minam, all those rivers that we're getting access to. The fish are coming back.
Historically, sockeye were very abundant, and they spawned all the way up to the falls, all the way to the lake, and even there's some records indicating that sockeye would spawn along the lake shore as well. Those eggs emerge as fry, and as soon as that happens, they drift down into a lake, and that is their nursery. And for about 2 years, and then they leave and head out to the ocean.
As we walk along the river, Jim and I come upon braids of river channels that fan out like fingers as we move closer to the head of the lake.
It's kind of an incredible area right here, and that fanning was even more extensive historically than it is today. The Wallowa Lake State Park is just through these cottonwoods, and during the development of the park, a lot of these side channels were covered over, and a little bit of channelizing the main part of the Wallowa. The sockeye were limited by the falls on the West Fork and the Cascades on the East Fork. But because of the extensive nature of all these braids and all of these channels, there was lots of spawning habitat here between up there and the lake right behind us.
And how fertile were these spawning grounds for sockeye?
This would have been a channel of red when the sockeye were here. Sockeye were the most abundant returning salmon species here in Wallowa County, and the estimate is between 20 and 30,000 adult sockeye salmon will return to this place. However, currently they can't come up here because there's a dam blocking them.
That concrete dam at the foot of the lake 3 miles away was built for local residential and agricultural use. It has blocked fish passage for sockeye since 1916.
So some people say, why go to all this trouble to bring anadromous sockeye back to Wallowa Lake when you've got kokanee?
Why sockeye here? It has to do with the sockeye being in the ocean. When they come back, they're bringing nutrients, marine-derived nutrients with them in their bodies that are released into this little local ecosystem. And those nutrients benefit everything and everybody. You have a healthier riparian forest because of salmon coming back and releasing those nutrients. The nutrients also benefit the organisms that are in the water. Macroinvertebrates, which are the insects, benefit from those nutrients. as well as the next generation of salmon. Those bodies are decomposing. Foxes, bears, and cougars all benefit from the nutrients that salmon bring from the ocean.
Are we talking about carcasses of dead sockeye that have spawned?
That is how these fish are delivering that important resource that's currently not here. There's documented well over 300 animals that take advantage of those nutrients, as well as the plants that are here. And even
300?
Yes. There's many animals, insects, plants that take advantage of those important nutrients that they wouldn't have any other way than these fish bringing them with them within their bodies. And so, even after death, they still contribute to this place.
Ensuring the future of sockeye reintroduction, Silas Whitman negotiated a conservation easement signed in 2020 with the owners of the very popular Wallowa Lake Lodge for 9 acres along the Wallowa River, around the lodge and at the head of the lake.
Here's a conservation easement. The tribe has it, has to sign for it, and in perpetuity, meaning that as long as those sockeye return to the lake, as long as the Wallowa flows in to provide the sustenance necessary, for the food, and our science staff, our people out of the field office, the research goes in and basically sets up what is needed, for the survival of the fish, and then the production folks, we provide the ability of getting in and getting what fish we can determine are the numbers that the habitat will hold for them. So all of that, it goes into a plan. The less said, the better. Let's get the action out there and demonstrate in our activities as opposed to words. As Chief Joseph said a long time ago, your good words come to nothing if you don't do anything with them. That to me is probably the most important thing, is that among ourselves we promote a greater understanding of what it is and why we get this.
And there's been several years of negotiation to rebuild the dam at the foot of the lake. This would allow passage again for the sockeye.
They've had that strong desire to put sockeye back into Wallowa Lake for a long time. And however, more recently, they're being joined by many other entities. 4 stakeholders have gathered together and finally come to agreement and signed a collaborative MOA to operate the dam and repair the dam in such a way that sockeye reintroduction will be possible again. And those 4 stakeholders are the owners of the dam, the Wallowa Lake Irrigation District, the state of Oregon through their ODFW, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Nez Perce tribe, and the tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, as well as many here in the local community also want to see sockeye restored to Wallowa Lake. And that will trigger the release of state funds to rehabilitate Wallowa Lake Dam, with the understanding that there will be fish passage as part of that reconstruction. Wallowa Lake is the home of sockeye. They should be here.
In the summer of 2022, Wallowa Lake Lodge celebrated its centennial year with a public event. It also dedicated the conservation easement to protect those Nez Perce ancestral lands along the Wallowa River. Tribal council members, dignitaries, and guests, native and non-native, gave speeches. Artwork for a commemorative Nez Perce blanket marking the occasion was unveiled, and everyone enjoyed a giveaway meal on the beautiful grounds home again to the Namipu. Will channels full of spawning sockeye be far behind? Shannon Wheeler was vice chairman then, and today is chairman of the Nez Perce Tribal Executive Committee. And since dreams are spiritually important to the Namipu, Chairman Wheeler had one to share as well.
30 years ago, I had a dream that I was coming out of these trees and I didn't know where I was. And at first I thought I was by myself. And then I looked when I come out into the opening into this meadow, There was a bunch of people that were in a line that way, then they was like in a line back this way. So it was kind of like this, and I was walking, and I was just like, wow, look at everybody starting to walk this way. And it was here back into this valley that our people were coming back into the valley together like that. And the creator, Haniwat, says, we need you back here again. He makes it possible. He makes it possible through dreams. He makes it possible through actions of dreams. There's still a sense of sadness because of the things that have happened to why we're at this point. But there's also that excitement for something coming home, just like us. The land misses us. The land misses the sockeye. The land misses those things that have been here since time immemorial. All those people that have kept this alive and kept our way of life alive, and those unwritten laws that we carried to the treaty grounds, the right to travel and exist and to hunt, fish, and gather, to be one with the land. So this journey will continue from this day forward in a better way at this place. And that's what we're happy for, is that piece of us, a part of us, we're still not whole, but a part of us has healed.
Tribal members Alan Pinkham Jr. and Louis Rubin traveled to Wallowa Lake from the Nez Perce Reservation in Idaho. And this is Nez Perce land in conservation easement for the first time since 1877, when your people were driven out. What does that mean to you?
First of all, it's just, you could call it righting a historical wrong, but that comes slowly. People that initially moved here, we welcomed. That was our custom, knowing that there was going to be more, that inevitably that we'd have to accommodate, and obviously we didn't know what the end result would be, but now we're working with the end result. And part of that is reintroducing the sockeye, and sockeye being one of the 5 salmon people, that it's important to reestablish that ecosystem here, not only for our cultural identity, but also just the salmon are part of the country, part of this land, part of this planet. They have been for millions of years. So for us to destroy these species, it's not a good human value.
I think that's a huge first step for us to return our inherent responsibilities as well. As stewards of this land, bringing the sockeye back, bring our relatives back, welcome them home as well, is a huge first step to restoration. There's a lot of work to be done still.
There's a resurgence, there's a rising up, and you've been part of one aspect of that relates intimately with the salmon, and that's the canoes. We're going to carve canoes again.
Yeah. I think that was such a light bulb idea. A lot of the things that were put away for a while, I wouldn't say it was lost, it was put away for a while, are starting to come back now, because it's no longer illegal to be an Indian. So a lot of the stuff can come back to the mainstream, to main front, to the front lines, and that's going to be our vessel to remove the dams and restore the salmon, restore the rivers, restore the environmental injustice that has been happening.
The dams that are being removed on the Klamath River, but also the Snake River, that are being looked at and seriously looked at. In my opinion, getting out on the water with canoes and making other people aware of that, especially ones that depend on hydroelectric for their livelihood. I don't see them as antagonists or enemies of me. That's just that they want to make a living too. It's just that they've been dependent on hydroelectric. People can make a living, but they don't need to wipe out whole species or maximize profit at other people's expense or lives.
Yeah, to piggyback on his point, our inherent rights protected by our treaty to travel unimpeded through our trails or the river. Dams kind of impede us from traveling, from getting to Celilo or further downriver on the Snake. That's something that I want to remove, not only for myself, because my roots are underwater from the Lower Granite Dam that flooded out my village site and the place where my great grandfather was born, and so it has a huge impact on me because I can't reconnect with something that's underwater.
Your home,
Wawawi.
That's underwater now?
Yes, it's under the lower granite reservoir. That was the place where my band would winter up along the Snake. We would move with the seasons, we'd be up on a Palouse, we'd be in the Blues. We'd spend a lot of time with our relatives from the Wallowa too. We see Lower Elwha a huge success story after dam removal, and we're hoping to bring that success story here.
The Klamath and Elwha river dams, now breached, are seeing salmon returning and habitat recovering. Breaching the 4 lower Snake River dams would support the ecology of the river and so much more. The Nez Perce are part of a science-based strategy to restore salmon, ensure a clean energy future, and support local communities. It's called the Columbia River Basin Restoration Initiative. Jim Harbeck believes if the salmon in the wild Wallowas are to survive, in some of the best habitat for them in the Northwest, the dams must be breached, and sooner than later.
And just to be clear, when we're saying breached, it is the earthen part of those dams that will be removed. That will definitely provide fish passage, or easier fish passage, than there currently exists. Right now, the Lower Snake River is no longer a river. It's just a series of ponds or impoundments. The water is slack and the water is warmer, and that means significant impacts to anadromous fish like coho, like sockeye, steelhead, Chinook salmon. All of them are adapted to cold water, flowing water. And so when these juveniles, like juvenile coho, juvenile sockeye, leave Wallowa County and head for the ocean, they would no longer hit that slack water, and their journey to the ocean would be a matter of days rather than months, and they would be less exposed to predation that they are exposed to now, and that water would be colder, more suitable for a cold water species like salmon. It's probably the best opportunity or best chance that we will have in our lifetime to address a lot of these issues that are negatively impacting our fishery resources. We are running out of time for these fish.
The future for the salmon nation here in the Wallowas and the entire Pacific Northwest is in our hands. It's time to come from a place of humility.
If you think of all the different stages and all the hoops that these fish have to go through, it's miraculous that, honestly, that there are any fish back here. And it's a tribute to the creator that designed this awesome cycle of life.
Silas Whitman many years ago spoke prophetically about a better life for the fish and for all of us. I want to believe it's the future we can all create together.
The change that is foretold that will be coming will signal that there'll be a new life after the end of an old. And now once again, we will be able to see rivers flowing with fish, compassion once again that will rule people's lives. It's a matter of trying to retain that within this rush of activity and paper that pervades our very essence today.
People of the Salmon was produced for the Idaho Mythweaver as part of its Voices of the Wild Earth radio and podcast series. Join us at mythweaver.org. The production team includes producers Jane Fritz and Justin Lantrip and editor Rich Wanschneider. Original music by Justin Lantrip. Traditional singing and drumming by Nez Perce Nation. The program was supported in part by a grant from the Idaho Humanities Council, a state-based program of the National Endowment for the Humanities, with additional funding by Idaho Forest Group and several anonymous donors. It is offered in reciprocity and in memory of Silas Whitman. Katsuyao. I'm Jane Fritz.